everybody. I happen to be a congregant at Rabbi Shapira's shul, his synagogue, so I am used to hearing this conversation often. One thing if the rabbi can explain, I've heard, I remember, you saying that this is nothing new, this whole strategy of the Zionists throughout history, from way back in the time of the desert when the Jews were in a cloud, to the people trying to pull them out of it, the Erev Rav, I don't know how you would call that in English. Well, throughout history, it seems that this strategy of claiming that they were the real Jews kind of thing has been a strategy that they've used. Is that something that you can address? Just to show that it's sort of not a new thing. This is just something that they've done throughout history.
Well, in short, yeah, Zionism is a new thing. It was, I mean, it's pretty obvious why nobody thought of it in the past, because it's a pretty crazy idea. In fact, Benzion Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu's father, he wrote a biography on one of our scholars, the Abarbanel. He was in Spain during the Inquisition. And he says, when the Inquisition happened, now he was a big officer for Ferdinand and Isabella, the Abarbanel. And when the Inquisition happened and the Jews were expelled from Spain, he says that the Abarbanel was such a smart politician, such a smart man, and such a wonderful person, but he can't understand what a dumb thing he did by not creating Zionism then. If he would have created Zionism, Jewish history would have been different. Well, Mr. Netanyahu Sr. didn't understand Judaism. Throughout history, Morty is right, when the Jews were in Egypt, they were told by God to remain in Egypt until they get a sign to be taken out. There was a tribe of Ephraim, that went out early. They were killed. It was a punishment by God. Throughout history, there are those that claimed that they were Jews, or those that wanted to leave the exile early, and they incurred divine wrath. That's pretty much what you were referring to?
Yeah, I don't think that Zionism is such a crazy idea. When you look at the rise of nationalism in late 19th century and early 20th century, you understand why assimilated Jews who were basically sensed a kind of an identity lost, were looking for a new kind of uplifting nationalist narrative. And what is quite astonishing is that, as Shlomo Zand says, and is quite right, they've managed to, in quite short time, invent such a powerful identity that is so dangerous, and it is definitely now the dominant Jewish identity, not Judaic identity. So we have to look at it, and actually, rather than slug it off, to try to understand what it is exactly. And I think that it is very powerful, because throughout Jewish history we see a lot of conflicts. You know, this is something that Jews, that this debating culture is part of the Judaic discourse, and it is quite interesting. And Zionism fits very nice into this culture.
Question for you, Gilad. Not everything that's powerful is wise, and not everything that looks wise at the time is wise in the long run. What do you think in the long run is going to happen to Israel and Zionism? For me, to start with, there is another, not anything that is powerful is ethical. This is my problem. The problem with Zionism is that it is uniquely unethical. It is plunderous, not from just you yourself. Obviously, the prime victims are the Palestinians. And you Americans, you are robbed every year, your taxpayer money. And what we get in return? More and more wars. Look at ISIS. Do you know what is going to happen with petrol prices, maybe? You will have to walk a lot. Zionism is a very concerning. Jewish identity, secular Jewish identity is very, very concerning, especially because we cannot even criticize it. All right? So now, when you talk about the future of Zionism, this is a very interesting, now I address your question. When we look at Israel, we see that actually the religious parties are becoming stronger.
the left, so-called left, there's never been really left there, is evaporating. It's basically non-existent. The party that used to be the left party, kind of Meretz, the only Jewish left party in the Israeli parliament, is now solely concerned with LGBT issues. LGBT is, I'll explain to you later, you know, lesbian, gays, you know, so this is the main issue. And it is not surprising that if a young Israeli who is living in the Jewish state is searching for true identity, has to choose between being an LGBT enthusiast or having this scholarship that has been evolving for 3,000 years, many of them say, I'm returning, you know, back home. This is the real true homecoming, and this is why more and more Jews, Israeli Jews, are recovered Judaic, you know, returning to Judaism. It's very obvious. So Zionism probably is not going to, is imploding. Israel is imploding. It's not that Israel will be smashed by the Palestinians or by the Palestinian solidarity movement. You know, Israel is falling apart and it's becoming more and more Judaic. We see it demographically, we can see it spiritually, we can see it politically.
So, thank you for your remarks. If I understand 100% correct, one of the main issues from Gilad's perspective of Jewishness is its chosenness aspect and its exceptionalism aspect. Now, I understand from the early Zionist perspective why the rabbi would disagree with their wanting to be like the rest of the nations because it's identity theft. But I would ask on Gilad, wouldn't the early Zionists' desire to be, to quote the rabbi, just like, you know, Francis to the French, shouldn't that be just the perfect cure for Jewishness?
I'm not sure that I got it. What is the question about?
Yeah, if the main problem with chosenness is, or with Jewishness is its chosenness, then the early Zionist idea of wanting to be just like, you know, the rest of the nations, shouldn't that be just the perfect solution in your eyes?
For sure. Now I wasn't sure that this is the question. Okay, this is a very, very interesting question. And it's very important. Zionism promised the Jews to make them into people like all other people. It was an anti-chosen. They hated the diaspora Jewish sense of chosenness, and I'm talking about mainly about secular Jews, and they said, no, we are going to be like the French, like the Brits. But here is the problem. They promised the Jews to be like all other people, but all other people don't want to be like all other people. So it was already a fantasy. So you really now clearly understood probably the core of the Zionist promise. It was a fantasy of unchosening yourself. It was a complete fantasy. And as I said before, and I do accept that I'm very unique, and a lot of people are very angry for me for stating it. I think that early Zionism, all those anti-Semites, was a very unique phase in Jewish history. It was an anti-Jewish, anti-chosen inclination that was actually defeated by Jewishness. And it's not surprising. Why? Because it was a movement of the Jewish people, of the Jewish secular people. And they came to Israel and saw the Palestinians, and they said, oh, we are going to walk like the Palestinians. And after 2 weeks, they saw that the Palestinians were cheaper. And they went back to be an exploiting culture. They did exactly what they did in Europe. It's very problematic, indeed.
I have an idea as to why it evolved in that direction. Okay. Why Jewishness defeated it. Because it was a fantasy. Because they wanted to create a nation that didn't exist. Nations develop organically. Like Israel wanted to create, it created a fantasy nation. It was nationalism. French nationalism is nationalism for a country. English for a country. Jewish nationalism, Zionism, was nationalism for a nation that did not exist. They concocted it synthetically. And the question is, why would anybody want to join this, this club? Why would anybody want to be a Zionist and move to Israel? Why would anybody want to be a national Jew? Now, there were Jews, by the way. They were called Kenanim. This guy, Yonatan Rotush, I think his name was, who had this movement where we're not Jews, we're Hebrews. We have nothing to do with diaspora Jews. It never got off the ground. The reason it never got off the ground is because why would anybody want to bother? You don't want to be Jewish, so get rid of your Jewishness. Why would somebody want to join this crowd? So what the Zionists did, they had to consistently infuse, like a Frankenstein monster who's not a person, we got to consistently infuse it with some artificial life. So first they started with this land business. Let's connect ourselves to the land, be pioneers. That became boring pretty quickly. Today, you know what they have? The Holocaust. The Holocaust is their God. There was a Pew survey. Listen to this. How do Jewish people identify with their Jewishness? What's essential to your Jewish identity? 19% say observing the Jewish religion. 19%. 19 of people who identify as Jews. 56 say Jewishness means essentially working for social justice and equality. Now, you don't have to be a Jew to do that, but okay. 69% say leading an ethical and moral life. Again, what does that have to do with 73% say essential to their Jewishness is remembering the Holocaust. Now, it used to be the Holocaust became a god. Do you ever hear the phrase, well, who's a Jew? Well, Hitler didn't distinguish between religious and non-religious. If Hitler didn't distinguish, that makes you a Jew. It used to be that God in the Torah decided who's a Jew. Now Hitler decides who's a Jew. It used to be that you can't question God. Now you can't question the Holocaust. Now, Holocaust deniers are bad, no question, but what about a God denier? You can be a godless person, you could question God, anything you can question in the Jewish religion, but not the Holocaust. Denying God used to be what put you outside of the camp. Now it's denying the Holocaust. Abraham, our father, went from town to town building altars to God. Now they go from town to town building Holocaust memorials. The Jews build a grand temple to God in the Holy Land. Now they have Yad Vashem. It used to be that people would go and visit the temple. All the Jews would migrate. Now they visit the concentration camps. Instead of Aliyah L'Regel, they have March of the Living. The Holocaust became their Jewishness. It's not just the Holocaust became their God. They have to constantly infuse Zionism with new life. And when the Holocaust becomes tired, because it will, as generations go further and further away from the Holocaust, it becomes less and less exciting. They're going to have to find something else. That's why it was doomed from the start, because it wasn't a live person. It was a synthetic person that they had to keep pumping with some artificial life. Now they have to find an other with a capital O. They have to find what they're not. It used to be they weren't the diaspora Jew, the Golos Jew. Now we're not the Palestinians. They always have to find something to create an identity around.
There is something, two points that are very, very important, I think, to mention in the context of the question and your comment. To start with, when Zionism was driven by self-hatred, it was a totally marginal movement. How many pioneers died in the first wave of migrants? Nothing. Zionism became the voice of the Jews, really, after 67. After 67, when they started to celebrate the ultimate chosenness. Now, the Holocaust. I'm not so sure that the Holocaust religion is going to disappear very soon. And the reason is that in the Holocaust religion, the Jew becomes the Jewish God. The Jew himself is the symbol of redemption. Look at me. Look, I was taken to Auschwitz, blah, 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 blah. And look what I've done. Look what I've achieved. So it's quite a unique God model. The Jew becomes the Almighty. And it is very, very frightening. and uniquely dangerous.
The lessons of the Holocaust that they keep talking about is that all throughout Jewish history, God failed. Our trust in God failed. Our religion failed. Hitler killed 6 million people. Therefore, we have to learn the lesson and take matters into our own hands. We call it in Hebrew, koichi v'yotzim yodi. It's a form of idolatry. God failed, the rabbis failed, the religion failed. Now the airplanes and the tanks are going to succeed. It's a militaristic God. And yes, it means I'm God. But just as importantly, it means the creator of the world is not God. Or if he is, he's not a masculine God. He's an incompetent God. He's a failure. That's what Zionism derives from the Holocaust. God failed. Now we have to have somebody else.
Yeah, Harold.
Thank you both very much. My name's Harold Channer, Jr., as it happens, and I guess I'm in the line of Anglo-Saxon. Harold lost in 1066 to William, but he was the one representing the Anglo-Saxon condition, and it's sort of outside of the Jewish one. But I wonder, I've got a question just taken out of a more general context of understanding, which I have a hard time quite coping with. When I think about the religious thing, I was Unitarian or beyond to the left of that somehow. But what I'm wondering about, when I think of the religions and so forth, I think of Constantine, I think of the prophetic traditions. And Constantine made power with Rome. He capitulated to Rome. And as I understand the Jewish promise was that there was to be no such ingathering or anything like that until the appearance of the Mashiach. I would ask, where is the Mashiach? And that's, I guess, the question I want to know. It was as though it was trying to do something that did not relate to Torah true seeing of things or, patience for the coming of the Mashiach. And I wonder, what's your thought about Natura Carta and the people who are very, very anti-Israeli or because of that? And I have one last little caveat to it. This idea of time and the idea of the fulfilling of a certain evolutionary process on the planet and so forth. Coming to a time of qualitative transformation in evolutionary terms, as it would seem, that seems to be pretty obvious at the time in which we live, and it gives a lot of angst and whatnot. And it may sound off the wall, but the thing with the Shia and the Sunni and the prophetic tradition, and within the Shia, you have the hidden Imam, the 12th Imam that is to appear at end time, much like the Moshiach in some sort of way. How do we deal with that view that is traditionally held by a great number of people? How do we deal with that question of being patient, waiting for time, that things were done too soon in an evolutionary sense on the planet?
You want to answer that, Gilad?
I'm sure that you will have a lot to say about it. I was expecting questions to do with Messiah or Messiah to appear for the obvious reasons in reference to Natura Carta and so on. Jewish history is, I can't decide whether suffocated or saturated with false messiahs. I already spoke about Shabtai Tzvi. And for many Jews, Zionism was a Messiah. It was a redemption. It is exactly that. They said, you see, they invented the diaspora, they invented the exile, they said 2,000 years, and now there is homecoming. There was a vector, there was an impetus, there was a line to follow. Now, this line obviously doesn't agree with the Judaic school of thought. But for many Jews, this was the Messiah. And when Mr. Netanyahu comes here and he tells you, I talk in the name of the Jews, he definitely pretends to be kind of a Messiah. Now, when it comes to Neturei Karta, it's very interesting because they say, no, you are not the Messiah, relax. You know, we'll have to wait for the... And actually, I asked once in Paris, kind of a cheap Neturei Karta rabbi, you know, because what is it going to do? When the Messiah comes, you will just kick the Palestinians, you will become Zionists. He said, don't worry, it's a metaphysical concept, it's not going to happen, you know. So the way I see it, you know, this anticipation to Messiah brings in Jewish history, in Jewish culture, a lot of false messiahs, and we are witnessing a very forceful Messiah, and this is Zionism.
Right, thank you, Gil, because I didn't understand something about the question. Now I do. The connection between the Neturei Karta and the Messiah, am I correct that the question is... No, right, no, but you mentioned Neturei Karta. Am I correct in the assuming that you mean it's a Neturei Karta belief that the Messiah is going to come and therefore we should wait? Right. Where's Neturei Karta come in?
Neturei Karta is Torah truth. And that you do not start what you're doing until the Messiah, you don't...
Okay. Yes. Jews believe in a Messiah. The Messiah will come. It's one of our fundamental beliefs. We also have signs for what the Messiah is going to do. One of the signs for what the Messiah is going to do is he's going to make all the Jews become religious. You hear that, Gilad?
I'm not a Jew, so it's not an issue.
And clearly, that's not what the Zionists did. On the contrary, they got so many Jews to become not religious. They even got Gilad to become not a Jew. That's not what the Messiah does. This certainly was a false. By the way, Theodor Herzl had a dream when he was, I think, 13 that he was the Messiah. I'm not joking. It's in the biographies. But it is wrong, and is it a terrible sin? It's a sin to create a Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel before the Messiah comes. That's a completely different topic, though. I'll tell you why. Right. Because even if the Zionists were 100% religious Jews, 100% religious Jews, had they created a state of Israel, that would have been a sin against our exile, against the Messiah. But Zionism, even without a state of Israel, is a movement to destroy what Gilad referred to as the Golas Jew. I am one of them. My Jewiness, that's my life, that's my identity. You know what, maybe they want to destroy the capitalists and the Marxists too, that's fine. Let them worry about themselves. I'm worried about me. They want to take away my religion. They want to create a Jewish state and define my Jewishness as something to do with nationalism. I got a question. When Israel wins a war, when Israel wins a gold medal, Jews are proud. Can somebody tell me what makes you proud as a Jew when Israel wins a gold medal? If American Jew, I remember there was a guy, Mark Spitz, a swimming guy, yeah. He won a lot of gold medals, right?
You watch Olympic Games.
I didn't watch, I remember. Listen. So I remember there was this guy, Mark Spitz, he was a swimmer, he won a lot. Okay, so he's a Jew, you're a Jew, I got it. Why, when Israel wins Olympic Games, are Jews proud? The answer is because they identify in a national sense with Israel. That's Zionism, that's idolatry. When Israel wins a war, Jews feel proud, not happy that the Jews in Israel weren't bombed. I have a son now who's in Israel, and I want him safe, and if there's no war, I'm very, very happy. But why proud? Because you identify with Israel as your country. That's Zionism, that's idolatry. That's changing the definition of Jewishness from a religion to a nationality. And you're making Israel your nationality. When people say, Jews speak like this, and even the most anti-Zionist Orthodox Jews sometimes do this. When they speak about Israel, and let's say the Arabs, they speak in terms of, we did this and they did this. It's we and the. Why is Israel we? It's not we, it's they and they. Again, there are Jews in Britain. When Britain fought with the Falklands, there are no Jews in the Falklands, I assume. Nobody referred to Britain as we. Why is Israel we? It's because you identify with Israel as some connection with your Jewishness. That's idolatry. That's Zionism. What in the world does Israel have to do with your Jewishness? There was a great rabbi who I once caught on that. I said, who's we? He says, you're right, they. The Zionists have, Zionism is it's not a state of Israel as much as it is a state of mind.
But it's a very forceful. This is what
very
I don't
forceful.
It's very forceful.
It's very forceful.
And the vast majority, we agree that the vast majority of Jews identify, and the 12 left Jews who don't identify with it actually now build their identity on their opposition to this identity.
Not
you
me.
know,
and that's the difference between me and you mentioned the Neturei Karta. The Neturei Karta are siding with the Palestinians. You know what? To me, that's Zionism. Because why do you, even as an anti-Zionist Jew, involve yourself in that conflict as opposed to all the other conflicts all over the world?
Yeah, this is a very...
Because you identify with that conflict as yours. That's Zionism.
This is something that I think that this observation somehow unites us. Because for Neturei Karta, I'm not against Neturei Karta. I'm not a political person. For Neturei Karta to think politically as Jews locates them in the third category, and this is a very important observation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. It's interesting that you both, I think, agreed about 99%, which is interesting and I was a little
very
surprised.
non-Jewish, by the way.
Not Jewish.
You see?
My question is, if by some way you were, either of you gentlemen were appointed, not elected, Prime Minister of Israel,
For sure.
how would you deal, not as a Jew, but as a head of state, as a human being, how do you deal with the Palestinian issue, which to me has been the most daunting problem? No president, no administration, no United Nations, no Israeli administration has made a dent.
Yeah.
So if either of you were appointed Prime Minister, what would you do differently? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
First, I'm Prime Minister. I represent all the Jews in the world. Okay? As a religious Jew, I'm not involved in politics. But I'll tell you what I would do to solve the Zionist problem if I was Prime Minister. I would get up and I would say like this. Will this work if I stand? Can I stand over here?
This one.
I need to stand. Prime Minister stands when he speaks. I have to have one of these, have to have like a 6-inch pile of papers over here with one word on each paper, right? That's how it works. My fellow Israelis, citizens of the United States, China, all over the world, we need your help. We made a terrible mistake. In 1948, we thought that we would save the Jews, we would redeem them. It didn't work out that way. Rabbi Shapiro was right all the time. More Jews, we thought we would be safe in Israel. We thought there would be an end to anti-Semitism. Yet more Jews were killed in Israel than everywhere else in the world since 1948. I was an idiot as Prime Minister when I came to Paris and I said, you know, Jews, if you want to be safe, come home to Israel. What, are you crazy? It's much more dangerous in Israel. The people in France should have come to Israel after, unfortunately, that terrible massacre they had in Jerusalem in the synagogue and say, Jews, if you want to be safe, come to the United States of America. They're not worried over there about a nuclear Iran, and they're not running into bomb shelters. Nothing worked out. We thought the Arabs would love us. They don't. They did think that. At the beginning, the Zionists even considered the Arabs a romantic prototype of a Jew, and they actually had their pictures of old Zionist pioneers with those Arab headdresses. It was a terrible mistake, but I don't know what to do. We need your help. We need, because figuring out what the problem is half of the solution. At least let us have the first half. You tell me perhaps it's impossible? Well, I want to tell you something. Once upon a time, people thought creating a state of Israel was impossible. But that happened anyway. You'd be surprised what could happen. We need somehow to safely and strategically get rid of this whole state of Israel. Maybe the Messiah is the only thing that could do it. Maybe. If it doesn't get dismantled by the time the Messiah comes, then he will. But until then, we need at least to put our heads together and at least to try to find a solution, which we have not been doing until now. And if you tell me it's impossible, I would like to invoke our founding father, Theodore Herzl, who said, "If you will it, it is no dream." That applies to the problem that we have now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I really apologize to the whole world for the havoc that I wreaked on you since 1948.
I think that it's very impressive.
Can we hear now from Prime Minister עצmon now here at
I'm not gonna stand. Okay, but you know, this spiel is gone. You know, this is how I end my wandering. I appoint myself a prime minister, and I suggest that I really know how to solve the problem once and for all, and it will take a 30-second speech. That's what it is. Benjamin Netanyahu, or Gilad עצmon, as the prime minister, should stand up tomorrow morning and say, "Listen, I thought about it. We made a horrible mistake. We failed to see it. We have to share this land. Tomorrow morning, every Palestinian who wants to return to his home, to his land, to his orchards, to his village, tfaddal, please come home." This is the only way to resolve this crisis. It is called the right of return. It is called the right of return. Now, can the Jews, or can a Jew come with such a suggestion while being Jewish? This is the $6 million question. So, when I wrote The Wandering Who, I didn't know how to address this issue. I realized that in order for Benjamin Netanyahu or Lieberman or Herzog to come with such a suggestion, they have to de-Jewify themselves, not to de-Judaic themselves, because they are not Judaic Jews, they are not religious. They have to cleanse themselves of this sense of chosenness. The only problem,
Not going to happen.
well, the only problem, if you take the chosenness from the secular Jew, nothing is left, not even chicken soup. Talking about Mark Spitz, when you think about Mark Spitz, you know how we did simulation with the knedel, you know.
So let the Messiah deal with it. That's the only solution.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Quick question about.
One second. Why don't you come over here? We have another.
I'd rather not.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
quick
It's okay.
question. It's about the beginning of what I think the core of Zionism, which is when the people of Israel wanted to have a king, David HaMelech,
Okay.
King David.
Yes.
Do you see a resemblance between that and, because you pretty much proved that anti-Semitism is not the reason for neo-Zionism, but what are your thoughts about those times as a rabbi, not necessarily as
Right. There is no connection between King David and the Zionists. King David was an instrument. He used his kingdom and his kingship as an instrument to help the Jews serve God, and he did it at God's behest. God has a command under certain circumstances we're obligated to have a king rule over us. In exile, it is not only not obligated, it is prohibited. The rules change. If they would put a king up there, even if he would be the most righteous person in the world, it will be a sin against the Messiah. Because right now we're supposed to be in exile. And we're not so, that's our safety, our protection, and our punishment. And you know what it's like? Tell you what it's like. You know, if a guy's sick and they put him on a respirator. So everybody, imagine, everybody's praying. Everybody's standing around the sick person praying for him to get off the respirator. Then a guy walks into the hospital and says, what are you guys praying for? Well, we're praying for this guy to get off the respirator. You're praying for him to get off the respirator? Stopping having such a goalless mentality. I'll get him off the respirator. He goes, pulls out the plug and rips the guy off the machine. I said, you moron, you just killed the guy. So I don't understand. You were praying all this time to get him off the respirator and I gave you what you wanted, right? That's the Zionists. God has us on a respirator now until we get better and the Messiah comes. We pray for us to be worthy of the Messiah to come, but until then, I'm in the United States of America, and you know what? You know what? Yes, it's a punishment, it's an exile. I want to tell you something. I feel safer over here than I would in Israel. I feel more happy over here than in Israel. So for a punishment to be here as opposed to in Israel, it's a very comfortable punishment. But the Zionists came and said, we're pulling you off the respirator before the time. God says if you do that, you kill the patient.
Yeah,
and that's what's happening.
I just saw a resemblance when the people of Israel said, we want to be people like the rest of the people. That's really what
yeah, but you have to remember one more thing, and I think that Shlomo Zand, actually speaks about it. The mythological image of the kingdom of David in Israel, in the Israel you and myself grew up in, was phantasmic. You know, we thought of a humongous kingdom. And it took Israeli archaeologists quite a few years to realize that it was actually a miniature kingdom. So, as the rabbi mentioned, what Zionism did, and was very powerful, very forceful in doing, they transformed the Bible into a land deed. Or land registration, how do you call it? I don't know. Registry, land registry. And they were very powerful. And we didn't mention it while, and correct me if I'm wrong, while for Torah Jews, the Talmud, Halacha, is the core of the Judaic discourse of the religion. For the Zionists, they got rid of the Talmud, they got rid of the Halacha, at least in the early stage, and they made the Bible into the core of their existence. It is very interesting, and it worked for quite a few years.
But it's mythology, a Bible they don't believe in, a God that they don't believe in gave them the land. A Bible study in Israel is a sport, like soccer. But soccer is much more holy than the Bible in Israel. 100%, yes. La Familia, I know all about these guys. Yeah. But their Bible and our Bible, again, it's homonyms. To us, it was a real thing. There's a real God that gave a real Torah. You know, if you don't agree with that, then fine. Then you don't agree with my religion, which is, it's your choice. But our religion, Judaism, that's what a real God gave a real Torah to a real Jewish people in the desert, in a no man's land, not in Israel. The Israeli Declaration of Independence, they have no constitution, says in this land the Jewish people were born. That's a lie. The Jewish people, I seem to recall a story in the Bible, the Jewish people came out of Egypt and then received the Torah on Mount Sinai in a desert. That's when they were born. Going into Israel did not make them into a people in the slightest. Yeah. They took our religion and made it into a mythology. It's a religion that I love, that we love. You know, as a terrible thing. Did you know this guy, Jack Tauber? He was a secretary of Vladimir Jabotinsky. He ended up a rabbi in Brooklyn. He made a play. They performed a play right here in, what they call it, across from Madison Square Garden. Across from Madison Square Garden, there's a place where...
Never mind.
Never mind. No. Next to the Pennsylvania Hotel. They performed a play over there. And... it's a play making fun of religious Jews, because they did that a lot, the Zionists. They made fun of, they mocked our religion, they mocked us. And here's one, scene 7 in Rabbi Tauber's play. There's youth. He compares the Beitar youth, Jabotinsky's militant youth, to the youth that have no youth. The youth that have no youth, quote, they spent their youth in the depths of the cheder. The cheder is a yeshiva elementary school. They spent their youth in the depths of the cheder. Of course, that institution was important from our national point of view, but unfortunately it educated its pupils in the gloomy psychological atmosphere of the ghetto. To achieve its goal, it misinterpreted Jewish history, and the thousand of wonders that make up our ancient glorious history were explained as miracles and not as the heroic deeds of our brothers, the Hebrews. The Bible, our religion, is a supernatural thing. That's what religions are. They come from God. It has to do with miracles and splitting of the Red Sea and splitting of the Jordan so that Joshua came in to the land of Israel and then the walls of Jericho miraculously fell. Again, if you don't want to believe that, that's your choice, but you don't believe in my religion. What they did was they said, no, Jewishness doesn't believe that. That's dumb, that's silly. If you want to be a good Jew, don't believe that. If you want to be a Jew, a good Jew, believe in the strength of your right arm. They corrupted Judaism. Believe in tanks and believe in guns, and that's a real Jew. That's what they did. That's unforgivable. You want to not be Jewish, you know what? Look what Gilad did. He goes to England, he becomes a saxophonist, and he goes to university, becomes a philosopher. As far as I'm concerned, his soul was still on Mount Sinai and received the Torah. If he doesn't want to believe that, fine. So I'm not Jewish, no problem, that's what he says. But a guy should come and say, yes, this is what Judaism is. This is what Jewishness is. And not only, imagine, you're a Yankee fan, but you don't believe in the Yankees. Okay? That's what it is. That's Zionism. But then they say, no, you know what? Being a Yankee fan is really nationality. It has nothing to do with the Yankees. We'll make up a language. Forget about it. You know, that's how Yankee fans talk. We have a land. We'll get a land. But it has nothing to do with the Yankees. That's some dumb thing. Some people. That's what the Zionists did with Judaism. Judaism has nothing to do with God. It has to do with a land, a language, and it has to do with a Holocaust. They literally, it's like saying, I'm a Yankee fan, but I don't believe in the Yankees. And those that do believe in the Yankees aren't the real Yankee fans. We're the real Yankee fans.
I think that we have to stop talking about Jews. We have to talk jazz now.
Okay.
You know, we have...
Bop.
Do we have a couple quick more questions, or what?
I think that...
we're good.
I think that we are good, I think.
I'm sorry, but you know what? If you write those down, we will get to them, okay?
Yeah,
I'm going to give you the cards. Really, friends, I wish we could keep going all night. This is only the opening, I hope, right? This is long overdue. This conversation is long overdue. The place didn't explode. I'm still a healthy person. I don't know about the rest of you. I feel better, actually. Why isn't this the norm? What's wrong with talking?
It will be the norm.
Why do people have to come and try to shut down wherever this guy wants to talk? What's wrong with that? You know, if you got, you know, the truth only hurts when it should, I suppose, right? That's, as a friend of mine said. This is talking, and this is highly enlightening talking, if you ask me. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.